future is now.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me for this episode of the NextNow podcast. I would like to talk in this podcast about how to engage employees in a hybrid workplace. And it's a big issue. And, we've run hundreds of surveys with audiences, leaders, organizations. And one of the biggest challenges listed when we ask them, what are your top 3 challenges right now? In the top 3 is, how do I keep my employees engaged in a hybrid workplace? And hybrid workplace is here to stay. There are people who have said, we're going to go back fully to in-office. I just saw an article in the Canadian media a few days ago where government is struggling to have their government workers come back to the office full-time, and in fact are losing some of those workers because of the mandate for in-office full-time. So I've been saying this for a while, even before the pandemic, that if we mandate a work construct for workers, they will make a choice not to be rebellious, not because they don't want to work hard, not because they're being difficult, but because we are in a post-pandemic, millennial, Gen X, Gen Z, generation COVID reality, where workers are more self-actualized and expecting more from their employers than ever before. If you find that daunting as a leader, it's kind of one way to look at it is we can push back against that reality and say, well, these workers, they have no work ethic, whatever happened to being grateful for a job, or whatever that thinking is that we might have that limits our perspective on what the work market is doing. I think it's more helpful and much more resourceful as a leader to be flexible and agile to the changes as they're presenting themselves. And with those changes, say to ourselves, okay, you know what, these things are happening. I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to resist it. I'm actually going to accept it. So what can I do to be a better leader that engages my teams? So right now, let's start with a self-assessment. If you were to rate yourself as a leader or as a team member, and rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being high, as to how engaged you are yourself or how engaged you think your team members are, what would that number be? So, for many of you, maybe that number is high. Maybe it's a 9. I would never say anything's a 10. So I think 9's at the top of the scale. That's just my personal thing as a coach and as a consultant. But if you're sitting at 5 or 6, it's like, okay, so why is that? Well, the nature of hybrid workplace on its own did create a lot of, I would say, change and disruption where people were not getting the same meaning for from their work. So, for example, if somebody was highly social and their work preference was to be in office in front of people, they struggled with when the shutdown happened and they had to work primarily from home or remotely. However, it's interesting, post-pandemic surveys said that every personality actually appreciated aspects of working from home or working remotely, such as less commute time, more time to get personal errands done while still getting the work done, more personal freedom, more time for personal fitness and well-being. So those were all the pros as to why every personality said, hey, wait a second, this work from anywhere concept is something that we need to be considering. There was a survey done recently by Wall Street Journal where they said that employees who feel more connected with people in their networks are more engaged. So when you say connected with people, the hybrid is ubiquitous within that, which means whether they're working in office primarily, working from anywhere, or a combination of both, people want to feel connected. Now, there was a past view that said we can only feel connected if we're in face-to-face. Well, that's been debunked. That myth has been debunked because we know that you can feel connected after having a Zoom call. You can feel connected after having a team session. It's how the virtual is being conducted that determines how we feel about it. So if we show up at Zoom and everybody's got their cameras off, or if we see people's body language, we know if they're checked out or they're texting or they're looking elsewhere, then yes, we're going to leave that meeting going, I didn't feel connected at all. But to feel connected on virtual, you have to be intentional. So you have to set up connection points in that virtual meeting, whether that's opening with a soft opening session where you talk about your pets or your kids or whatever it is, whether that's interjecting quizzes throughout that virtual session or polls or some sort of, humor session. But we have to intentionally seek connection in our communications in a hybrid workplace. In that same survey that Wall Street Journal did, it said employees are 2 times more likely to report higher sponsorship when they feel connected in a hybrid workplace. In other words, they're willing to take more risks, make more decisions, be more autonomous when they feel connected. Another point, 1.5 times more likely to report being engaged at work if they feel connected with their employees and their coworkers. And then also 1.5 times more likely to report a sense of belonging at work when they feel connected. So a lot of times, I would say specifically with virtual, when we're having virtual meetings, it's right to the business. I have clients I'm coaching right now, and they're like, yeah, no, we never have an agenda. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the rules of an agenda apply even more now with hybrid, which means every meeting needs an agenda. Even if that agenda is, 2 items, you want it there because people's time, we need to honor their time, but we also need to build connection into those virtual meetings. Being engaged also means as an employee that you're not waiting for your leader to make you feel connected or engaged. You're seeking those connections. You're reaching out to people that you'd like to learn from or connect with, and you're being mindful of their time. And you're also being very purpose-driven about what you want their time for. As a leader, you are focused daily on how do I stay connected and engaged to my team members. I just had a coach call this morning with a leader, and that leader was saying, yeah, I've got 12 people, and he spoke mostly about 3 or 4 of those 12 people. When I asked about other people on the team list, his comment was kind of almost flippant, like, yeah, they're fine. And it's like, well, that's a big sort of red flag when we have teams of more than 6, we've got those larger teams, that we tend to sort of have a bias towards the same 3 or 4 people. And we tend to also delegate more to those 3 or 4 people. And we tend to sort of ignore the outliers, if you will. So an engaged culture means we are looking at every employee, looking at their growth potential, looking at how we can mentor them, support them, help them. Now, I realize not every employee wants to be a superstar. Not every employee wants to be promoted. And thank goodness, we need those employees who are happy to just keep doing what they're doing. But we can't be complacent about having them on the team. We have to engage them by asking, do you want any extra projects at this time? How are you feeling about the last project you were in? How's your workload? How are you finding work-life balance right now? How can I support you with resources? Are you looking to have a new book recommendation? Some of the leaders I coach are coming up with book clubs, and, not that people have time to read a whole book anymore, but, reading a chapter and then coming back and using that as an engaged discussion as part of their virtual meetings. So there's lots of ways we can engage. I think for many of us, we're plain tired. I have many leaders who say, I'm running as fast as I can, Cheryl, and I get it. And I have empathy for that. And I would say to you that when we're focused on engagement as a primary part of our purpose, it's not something that drains our energy. It's something that gives us energy. So it actually adds and enhances to the tasks that we have to get done. Actually, I will also tell you that the more engaged you build your culture in your department and your team, the more you're able to delegate at a higher level, the more you're better able to solve problems, the more autonomous your teams are. So that's it for today's session, how to engage your employees in a hybrid workplace. And I'll be talking about this more in future episodes. Take care.